Hello everyone. Today's topic is animal habitat interaction. But before coming to interaction, we have to know what is a habitat. See, most of the plants and animals live in areas with very specific climatic conditions like temperature, rainfall, which allow them to live and thrive. If any kind of change occur in these conditions, that can affect the biodiversity as well as the makeup of entire ecosystem. For an example, we have here four pictures. All pictures are having a different kind of habitat which is occupied by different species. If talk about these two pictures, where in one it is Asiatic lion and opposite to it is the African lion, and both species are same but subspecies are different, and they are used to live in a different type of habitats. How? The Asiatic lion prefer to live and thrive in a dry deciduous conditions of forest of semi-arid region in India only, and it is the endemic species of India or Asia, or only in sole population it is existing in Gujarat, Gir. On the basis of similar kind of habitat, lions translocation proposed by the Indian government to MP, which is a topic of controversy between politicians, scientists, ecologists, and sound businessmen. In the dry deciduous forest, what characteristics support to this species? As you can see in the pictures, around the animals, around the lions, there is a thorny vegetation. So peculiar characteristics of the dry deciduous forest are say open habitat and scattered and thorny trees are existing there. No doubt there are several riverine belts, but these belts are occurring across the big reservoirs like Sona, Heron, Singodra Nadi, Raval Nadi, Machundri, where lions do rest in hot hours. Means for the resting activity they use riverine belts. Contrary to it, in this picture, the African lions, if you can observe here, they are used to live in open habitat of savanna or tall grasses. The habitat of African lion is a variety of grassland, dense scrub and open woodland. In case of the snow leopard habitat, it is a resilient to direct impact of climate change like rising temperature and drought, and because of their need little water and they can tolerate a range of temperature. So they are able to live in this kind of habitat. They cannot survive elsewhere. In the last picture, there are elephants which live in tropical and subtropical regions of either Asia or Africa. They are found most often in savannas, grassland and forest. Like migration shows clear relation between animal and habitat. Again, we have a slide of four pictures where two pictures are showing the habitat of birds. In one we have the habitat of crocodile, and the fourth one it is the coral reef habitat. So talk about coral reef, it is the habitat which created in shallow tropical water by millions of tiny animals called corals. Each coral makes a skeleton for itself, and over time these skeletons build up to create coral reefs, which provide habitat for lots of fish and other creatures. Warmer water has already caused coral bleaching, which is a kind of damage to corals in many parts of the world. And by 2050, it is assumed that live corals could become rare in tropical and subtropical reefs due to the combined effects of warmer water and increased ocean acidity, which is caused by more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and which is accumulating in the atmosphere due to human activity. The loss of coral reefs, it will reduce habitats for many other sea creatures, and it will disrupt the food web that connects all living things in the ocean. In second picture, we have cranes which live in wetlands such as canals, marshes and ponds, sometimes near human habitation. In agricultural land, they inhabit cultivated areas more preferably, and high altitude wetlands too. But during breeding, they have to move far or migrate to inland, but move towards always the wet areas. During the dry season, they live in shallow wetlands, wet grasslands or paddy fields. In the left bottom picture, it's a habitat of crocodile, where they normally live in near lakes, rivers, wetlands, and even sometimes in saltwater regions too. If see worldwide, some North American animals and plants, they also show the interaction, the direct relation with the habitat, or habitat that change according to climatic conditions. As North American animals, they move farther north or to higher elevation to find suitable places to live. Climate change also alters the entire life cycle of plants. In another instance, if see, when temperature gets warmer, many plants start to grow and bloom earlier in the spring and survive longer into the fall. Some animals, they wake up from hibernation sooner or migrate to different times too. So these all activities are relating to habitat requirement, and due to habitat requirement, they change their current location. They move, they migrate to different locations for completing or fulfilling their requirements for survival resources. But in the changes in the habitat that occur due to climatic conditions. In simple words, habitat is made up of physical factors and availability of light, as well as biotic factors and the presence of predators. A habitat creates by the soil, moisture, temperature, light, food, shelter, etc. More precisely or technically, the habitat of an organism is the place where animals live. See, within each ecosystem, there are habitats which may vary in their size, in composition of plants, and in geological features. A habitat is a place where plants and animals normally live. Some habitats have lot of plants and animals, some don't. Some habitats are near water, some are on the top of mountains. Each habitat has a different mixture of species living there, and it is a place where a population lives, a group of population of the same kind of organisms in the same area or a place at the same time survive. All of the plants and animal populations living in a habitat interact and form a community, right? But later on, Giles presents a wildlife habitat people triad, where he says that wildlife habitat people represents the three major aspects of wildlife management, which is equal and quite interactive. Thinking about any species is difficult without considering the species habitat or the role of human, or the influence which created by the humans, which so drastically influence them. And most biologists would have a difficult time visualizing organism without also visualizing its habitat. They go hand in hand. However, understanding habitats and managing them is not as simple enough, though there is an abundance of literature that addresses the concept of habitat and the concepts which are relating to habitats. On the basis of review literature, habitat is the resource and condition present in an area that produces occupancy, including survival and reproduction by a given organism or animal. Habitat implies more the vegetation or vegetation structure. It is the sum of the specific resources that are needed by a particular animal or organism. These resources include the same things: food, cover, water, spatial factors needed by a species for survival and reproduction success. Wherever an organism is provided with resources that allow it to survive, that will be called as habitat. One of the earliest work examining the habitat of a species was given by Stoddard in his study of bob-white quail, Colinus virginianus. Since then, the field has advanced significantly. But later on, Leopold outlined the evolution of wildlife management as a progress through 5 stages. When we think about the habitat management, so the concept of Leopold that comes first. And these 5 stages, or the sequence of 5 stages which has been given by Leopold, is laws and regulations, predator control, reservation of land and refuge, artificial replenishment, and environmental controls. He suggested that to manage any habitat, these 5 stages should be followed up. The use of concepts and terms for habitat is not consistent. It distorts the communication among scientists in our disciplines. For a lay person and for a public, there are a lot of confusions about the term habitat. But all one has to do is quickly glance at the literature to see the different uses of terminology in relation to habitat. On the basis of review of literature, as was suggested, concepts related to habitats have been found and have been represented over here. I'll name it on the basis of its importance: habitat use, habitat availability, habitat preference, habitat selection, critical habitat, quality habitat. See, the concept of habitat is a cornerstone in the management of wildlife. Until unless we don't have knowledge about the habitat, we are not clear about the terminology of habitat, we cannot go for management. However, the understanding and management of habitat has been confused with loose terminology and flexible definitions that make communication quite difficult between, say, conservationists and public. And the concepts related to habitat that should be very clear at the level of scientist or conservationist, because every concept of the habitat has a specific meaning. As here we have several concepts, every concept is having its different definition, unique definition. So habitat is a species specific, scale dependent and measurement matter. The management of habitat is of little value unless biologists first determine, or ecologists doesn't determine, an animal's habitat use pattern within a specific environment and then consider the evolutionary and human disturbances that influence it. So if you have a little bit idea, you are going through the literature, in ecological studies you must find the aspect of habitat either in any kind of term or in the form of any kind of concept of habitat. Habitat use. It is the way an animal uses the physical and biological resources in a habitat. Habitat may be used for these following purpose: foraging, cover, nesting, escape, tanning, or other life history or traits. And for even every purpose, animals need a different kind of habitat. These categories like foraging and escape divide habitat, but overlap occurs in some areas. One or more categories may exist within the same area but not necessarily. An area used for foraging that may be used for any other purpose, like the area is being used for nesting, maybe that is also being used by denning for some other animal species. The area is being for foraging that is being used for the escape purpose from the predators. So an area used for foraging may be comprised of the same physical characteristics used for cover, denning, or both, because various activities of animals require specific environmental components, a specific kind of habitat, a particular habitat that may vary on seasonal or even annual basis. This is the reason that seasonally or annually animals change their habitat. If a species may use habitat on seasonal basis, that will change on annual basis. The same habitat may be used for another species in the reverse order. In case of habitat selection, habitat selection is the hierarchical process which involves several factors. Some are from behavior, some from ecology, some are from biology. See, innate and learned behavioral decisions which animals make, that what habitat we should use, or animal or species should use, that is at different scales of the environment. Their heredity and experience play an important role in determining the selection of the habitat. If an individual select or species shows disproportionate use for any factor of the habitat, then the selection definitely occurs for those criteria which relates to foraging purpose, cover use, or escape from predators or resting activity, etc. The differences between proximate and ultimate factors So what is proximate factor and what is ultimate? Proximate factors serve as cues an animal uses to determine the suitability of a site, including the specific vegetation composition within a desired habitat, whereas reproductive success and survival of the species are the ultimate reasons that influence the species to select the habitat. The ability to live or persist is governed by the ultimate factors, which is in relation to forage availability, shelter, and avoidance of predators. Then only population can reproduce and grow in numbers. Several interacting factors have an influence on habitat selection too, such as intraspecific and interspecific factors, which includes competition, cover, and predation purposes. Competition, suppose, is involved because each individual is involved in intraspecific or interspecific relationship that partition the available resources within an environment or within a habitat of the given environment. Competition may result in a specific failing to select a habitat which is suitable in all order resources, or may determine spatial distribution within the habitat. If talk about predation, it complicates selection of the habitat. The existence of predators may prevent individuals from occupying an area which is of its use or which is of its interest. Survival of the species and its future reproductive success are the driving forces that cause an individual to evaluate these biotic factors. With a high occurrence of competition and predators, an individual may choose a different site with less optional values, less optional resources. Once predators are removed, areas with necessary resources can then be inhabited again by the same individual. And this kind of things is happening even everywhere, particularly in multi-predator ecosystems. So you can go through the literature, you will find many examples where on the basis of competition and predation, inferior species, they leave their preferable habitat or the habitat they select for living and thriving. So habitat selection, therefore, is an active behavioral process by an animal, and each species searches for features within an environment that are directly or indirectly associated with the resources that an animal needs to reproduce, to survive, to persist. Okay? So this lecture will be continued in the sequence. Till it, bye-bye.